This week's Parashat Pinchas, we have the story of the Benot Tzlophchad, the 5 orphan daughters of Tzlophcad who make their impassioned plea to Moshe Rabbeinu, impassioned yet very respectful, a lot of kavod to Moshe Rabbeinu and all the Gdolim, saying, please grant us a nachala. Can we please have a portion in the land of Eretz Yisrael? We know that our father died, we know that we're orphans, we know we have no brothers, but please, Bezat Hashem, can we, these 5 sisters, these 5 daughters, can we have a piece in the land of Eretz Yisrael? So I want to get to the actual parasha itself. Says the Torah, Perek Kav Zayin. Let's look closely at the Pesukim, and then Bezat Hashem, let's try to say some deep ideas. So says the Pasuk. The Pasuk actually starts off with a long lineage of these daughters. Vatikravna Benot Tzlophchad, the daughters of Tzlophchad, they came close. Who are they? Ben Chefer, Ben Gilad, Ben Machir, Ben Menashe, Lemishpechot Menashe, Ben Yosef. Takes us down their whole lineage all the way back to Menashe, all the way back to Yosef. And the Torah gives us the names of the 5 daughters. Now note that in this lineage over here, there's a major focus on the tribe of Menashe. They are ultimately the Ben Menashe, the Ben Chefer, Ben Gilad, Ben Machir, Ben Menashe, Lemishpechot Menashe, Ben Yosef. So there's a focus on Menashe. There's also taking us all the way back to Yosef. Rashi brings down from Chazal, this taking us back to Yosef is not by chance. Rather, what's the hint in the Torah? Benot Tzlophchad inherited their special passion for Eretz Yisrael from none other than Yosef. Yosef HaTzadik had this tremendous love of Eretz Yisrael, always wanted to make it back to Eretz Yisrael, made his brothers promise him, bring my body back to Eretz Yisrael. They inherited this passion, this love of Eretz Yisrael from Yosef. But not just Yosef. We have Yosef's son Menashe, and then we have Menashe's son Machir, their great-grandfather. We spoke in the past from Rabbi Yair Khan. He says beautifully, the very end of Bereshit, the Torah tells us that Yosef taught his grandkids, even all the way up to the Bnei Machir. We see the concept of Machir, the Bnei Machir, the love of Eretz Yisrael. The Torah already told us back in Bereshit was going to go through this line, and now we have the great-granddaughters of Machir. They also are Chovevei Haaretz. They also love the land of Eretz Yisrael. This is chinuch of loving Eretz Yisrael, working generation by generation down to the Benot Tzlophchad. But not only that, we also see in them a bit of that spark of the Mashiach ben Yosef. We've spoken many times in the past about Mashiach ben Yosef, the special koach that's going to come and conquer the land of Israel, that's always connected to the land of Israel. Now, normally we think of Mashiach ben Yosef as associated with Menashe's brother Ephraim. This is normally the Ephraim line. You know, Yisimech Elohim Ephraim Menashe. We blessed against to be like Ephraim and Menashe. So in a certain aspect, we always see Ephraim, even though he was the younger, he was elevated to the higher status. So Ephraim tends to be related much more to Mashiach ben Yosef. We have the story of the failed Aliyah of the Bnei Ephraim 30 years before the Jewish people left Mitzrayim. A group of Bnei Ephraim tried to make it to Israel too early. They tried to push the Ketz. They tried to bring the Mashiach too soon. Ultimately, they didn't make it, but we have this concept of Bnei Ephraim trying to run to Israel. Early Aliyah. We have the kochot of Yoshua bin Nun in our parasha, the head of the tribe of Ephraim. He's in this week's parasha, he gets the smicha from Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu is now going to label him. He's going to name him the next leader of the Jewish people. That's Yoshua from the tribe of Ephraim. So normally we think of the passion of Eretz Yisrael as an Ephraim kind of midah. But we see over here that Yosef's kids, we have Ephraim and Menashe. Menashe also seems to have this koach, this spark of Mashiach ben Yosef. We see in the Benot Tzlophchad, who desire the land of Israel so much. Actually, I saw in Sefer Binat Itecha, his very last piece, where Moshe Rabbeinu brings down an unbelievable idea. Maybe we'll share it in future years because it's way too long for over here. But he writes over here that Menashe seems to have the kochot that are even greater than Ephraim, but those kochot are really going to be saved for the times of Mashiach. It's Yemot Mashiach ben Yosef energy. That's really the tribe of Menashe. Okay, that's a different story. But back to our story. Not only is this love of Eretz Yisrael a Yosef character trait, but there's another reason why they loved Eretz Yisrael so much. Because they're known as the Benot Tzlophchad. They're the daughters of Tzlophchad. We're not talking about the Bnei Tzlophchad. There actually are no banim. There are no sons over here. But there's a feminine character trait. Chazal teach us that the women themselves, the women in general, all the women from all the tribes, they had a special love for Eretz Yisrael that we don't find by the men. As the Midrash on our parsha tells us, that the women did not sin with the Lashon Hara of the spies. So the spies came back and said that Lo Na'aleh, we can't conquer this land of Eretz Yisrael. It's not for us. They didn't listen, they didn't sin, they didn't believe it, and Chazal tell us they didn't sin with the Lashon Hara of the spies, and they didn't sin with the sin of the Egel. It's the Midrash Rabbah by us, in our pasuk, Perakaf Aleph, Siman Yud, says the Midrash, Vanashim lo nishtatfu imahen b'maaseh Egel. The women did not join in with the men to sin with the Egel. V'chen b'meraglim shotziu diba. They also did not sin with the meraglim, with the spies, when they spoke Lashon Hara against the land of Eretz Yisrael. In truth, there are conflicting midrashim in this that the women maybe have been part of some of the sins, but the mainstream mainstream approach in Chazal is that the women did not sin in the two biggest sins that took place in the desert, to the point that they might not even be part of the decree to have to die with that generation. And I guess more women lived to older ages and made it into Eretz Yisrael. Now I was thinking, if we look at the 3 weeks period we're in right now, where we're in the Benot Tzlophchad, these are the 3 periods that started with Yud Zayin B'Tammuz, which in the earliest sin that Chazal see, or the earliest problem that took place, it relates to the breaking of the Luchot. The Shirat HaLuchot is the sin of the Egel, and it culminates on Tisha B'Av. In 3 weeks from now, Tisha B'Av, the first sin that took place in Tisha B'Av, is the sin of the spies. So normally we look at this 3-week period as the main focus is the destruction of the temple, from the siege being broken until the actual destruction. But the earlier sins, the shorish for the mistakes that took place, Yud Zayin B'Tammuz, the breaking of the Luchot, the sin of the Egel, and Tisha B'Av, the sin of the spies. And what do we see from our Midrash? The women, according to Chazal, weren't involved. They weren't involved in anything that led to the Khurban, to these 3 weeks of the Benot Tzlophchad. So it could be that maybe they're going to be the ticket, or the approach of the women is going to be our ticket to redemption. It's going to be the ticket to the Yomot HaMashiach. And we know Yomot HaMashiach, what's it going to be? We're going to have a nachala bli metzarim. We're going to have ourselves inheritance. The land, the future Eretz Yisrael is going to have boundaries that are going to extend way beyond the current Eretz Yisrael. So now they're asking for a little bit of land in Eretz Yisrael, but in the future we know the land's going to expand even more. And the women get that. The Benot Tzlophchad, they get that. They're living and they're seeing things as times of Mashiach. That right now the halacha hasn't been taught yet. It's about to be taught through them. Do women inherit if there's no brothers? But on the point right now, there were no sons that were born. We might think, maybe women don't inherit. Maybe in this case it goes over to the uncle, it goes over to the brother. Our Torah, our parsha is going to tell us who's the next in line. Maybe we just skip over women altogether. But they're saying no. We want a piece in Eretz Yisrael. We understand Eretz Yisrael. We understand Eretz Yisrael is much greater than you're ever going to believe. And just like in the future, we're going to have an Eretz Yisrael that's going to expand everywhere. They're saying, okay, we want to expand also right now too. We also want our portion right now physically in the land of Eretz Yisrael, and they're going to win. Okay, let's go back to our psukim. Vata'amodna lifnei Moshe, and they came and they stood before Moshe Rabbeinu. Vata'amodna sounds like they're standing in front of them. It's a language of a kavod. Vatikravna, it's a soft, it's respectful. They're standing in front of Moshe, says Chazal. Velifnei Elazar Kohen, velifnei Nesiim, in front of Elazar Kohen, Nesiim, v'chol ha'edah, petach ol moed lemor. They're basically standing in front of all the most important people. And it sounds like the whole edah as well. So we have this big event. We're going to give a couple of perushim a little later on. Who's standing? Why are they standing? What's really going on over here? But they're standing in front of Moshe Rabbeinu to ask him a halakha question. I heard brought down that whenever you standing is also what you do in a Beit Din. So they're coming to deal with real halakha. They have a real claim they're trying to make right now. And they say to Moshe Rabbeinu, they say to all the elders, Avinu met bamidbar. Our father died in the desert. And he wasn't part of one of those factions that complained against Hashem, part of Korach's group. He wasn't Adat Korach. Because he died in his sin. He had a different sin, different than him. It wasn't that level of sin of Korach. Ubanim lo hayulo. And he didn't have any sons. Meaning we're the only ones left of his heirs. We're the only daughters. Now, from the start, they recognized that their father had a chet. They recognized that he sinned. But they're asking if the punishment that now falls on them, that their family line, that Tzlophcad line, no longer gets an inheritance in the land of Israel, is that justified? Now, to digress for 1 second, who was their father Tzlophcad? So the Gemara in Shabbat, the Tzadik Vav Amud Bet, gives 2 opinions who he was. According to Rabbi Akiva, Tzlophcad was the Mikoshesh Etzim. He was the person who broke Shabbat. Now, that whole story itself is complicated. I saw in Emunat Itecha, he brings down beautifully that a person who keeps Shabbat, his bracha is going to be to receive an inheritance, bli metzarim. He's going to get an inheritance boundless boundaries. I mean, it's going to go, the inheritance is just going to go and it's going to go. It's going to be major nachala. So on the one hand, we can say over here it's a little bit complicated that if he actually broke Shabbat, so maybe part of the punishment is that it's midah not in the reverse. The onus should be you now lose land. You get no nachala. On the other hand, the Mefarshim explain, Rabbi Akiva is really hinting that he was L'Shem Shamayim. Everything he did was L'Shem Shamayim. He broke Shabbat, he did a sin, but it was L'Shem Shamayim because they explain he was trying to do a massive Zikuy Arabim to teach the people that you still have to keep Shabbat. He was trying to teach the Dor HaMidbar that had just been told that they're not going to enter the land of Israel with the sin of the spies. Meaning the story takes place according to this approach 40 years earlier, or 39 years earlier. But he's telling them we still have to keep halakha, we still have to keep Shabbat. So he's dying for the sake of Shabbat. He's breaking Shabbat for the sake of Shabbat, which we actually already know an earlier story of one of Yosef's kids. We had the Ephraim have a zechut to bring korban on Shabbat, so it's a little bit complicated how the Yosef kids on Shabbat actually work. But in a certain sense, there's something l'shem shamayim taking place over here, and it's not what Korach was doing. He was trying to do zikuy rabim. Korach is trying to bring all the people down. The exact opposite. So this is not a Korach level sin. And then in contrast, if we go to the second opinion of the Gemara, says of Yehuda ben Betera, so the next time in the Gemara, he says that Tzlophchad's sin was that of the Ma'apilim. The Ma'apilim were the Jews that after the punishment of the spies, after the whole Jewish people cried crocodile tears that then they can't conquer Israel. So Hashem said, okay, fine, you can't conquer Israel, then this generation is going to die in the desert, you can't enter. But there was a small group of people who said, no, we're going to do it, we're going to go in, we're going to conquer Eretz Yisrael. And according to this opinion, he was one of those Ma'apilim, he was one of those people who got up and tried to conquer Eretz Yisrael, but ultimately dies because Hashem had said, no, there is now a decree against you a little too late, and we spoke about that in the past a lot, why Hashem did not want to accept the Ma'apilim now saying, let's go up and conquer Eretz Yisrael. It's actually interesting. Both opinions, according to standard Chazals, will learn that the sin that took place of Tzlophcad took place as some kind of a result because of the sin of the spies. Now, going according to this approach that he's one of the Ma'apilim, so this actually very much fits with the love of Eretz Yisrael kind of concept. Like we said, the Bnei Ephraim tried to leave Mitzrayim and go too early into Israel. So now we have a Ben Menashe. We now have the Bnei Menashe too. We have these Ma'apilim that also are trying to push the Ketz. They're trying to push the Messianic era too soon. And this actually mystically might be symbolic of the concept of the death of Mashiach ben Yosef. Okay, side ideas. But this approach fits very well with Benot Tzlophchad's love of Eretz Yisrael, this desire to have a portion, but it also seems to be that, they had more patience than their father. They waited 40 years before coming before Moshe Rabbeinu to make their plea, and it could be that part of this approach is a tikkun for their father's sin. Okay. Then they ask, back to the Psukim, they say with some deep wisdom, Lama yigara Hashem Avinu mitoch mishpachto? Why should our father's name be lost right now? And this line is no longer going to cease to exist. Ki ein lo ben, tinen lanu achuza betoch achei Avinu. He says he doesn't have any kids. It's not fair. Let us have a little bit of land with our achei Avinu, with all of the male parts of our tribe, with our uncles and the rest of the family. Now, the Gemara in Baba Batra, this is Taf Kuf Yutet Amud Bet, on this argument of theirs, it says, Tana, the rabbis taught, Benot Tzlophchad Chachmanioten. These daughters, they were very wise, they were smart. Darshanioten, they knew how to interpret the verse of the Torah. Tzidkanioten, they were righteous. And the Gemara then goes on to analyze our pasuk. What was the wisdom behind their arguments? What was the chokhmah? What was the drasha? And part of it, Chazal tells us that they waited patiently until Moshe Rabbeinu and his students were learning the laws of Yibum to make their case. Because part of their argument was that in our halakha there is no Yibum. Yibum only takes place when there's when there are no kids at all. There are daughters, but how come if there's no Yibum then? How come we can't get land? At least let our mother do Yibum, and then that child will become, that brother of ours will ultimately get the land. So they're making some very deep Yibum. Yavamot is known to be one of the hardest Mesechtot in the whole Shas. They're making arguments legabei Mesechet Yavamot. And lo and behold, after they make their case, Moshe Rabbeinu doesn't know how to answer them. He doesn't know the answer. It says the pasuk, Vayikarav Moshe mishpatan lifnei Hashem. And Moshe Rabbeinu took their case before God. And then he has to ask God, what do I do? And God responds, God tells Moshe, Ken Benot Tzlophchad Dovrot. They're speaking right. They're correct what they're saying. Naton titen lahem achuzat nachala b'toch avihem. Give them nachala. Give them achuzat nachala. Give them land with their brothers. Va'avarta et nachalat avihem lahen, and give their father's share to them. Ve'el b'nei Yisrael tedaber lemor ish kiamut uben ein lo vartem et nachalato le'ivito. And now we're going to learn a law that any family who after the father dies, there's only daughters, there are no sons. The daughters inherit the land. And we'll learn a brand new halakha in the Torah about women inheritance. So now Hashem is telling Moshe Rabbeinu they were right, their thought process was correct, the halakha is correct, they deserve to inherit the land. Now, what's going on over here? Why did Moshe Rabbeinu not know this on his own? Didn't Hashem teach Moshe Rabbeinu the whole Torah at Mount Sinai? Doesn't Moshe Rabbeinu really get everything? How come Moshe Rabbeinu didn't know this halakha? So Rashi gives us two approaches to this like anomaly in the Torah. There's only very few places where Moshe Rabbeinu doesn't know the halacha, and each of those places there's like mountains and mountains of Torah to try to understand it. So Rashi gives two approaches. The first one a bit critical of Moshe, and the second one more of a praise for the Benot Tzlophchad. So says Rashi, "Vayekrev Moshe et mishpatan." Moshe Rabbeinu brought their case before HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Nit alma halacha mimenu. This law escaped him. He didn't know this halacha. Moshe lost it, meaning it's a punishment. Vekan nifra al shanatal atara. And the reason for this punishment is because he took the crown for himself. What does that mean? So it's based on the Gemara in Sanhedrin, Tafchet Amud Aleph, based on a pasuk in Devarim, Perik Aleph, pasuk Yud Zayin. There Moshe Rabbeinu is recounting how did the court system work. So he said, V'adavar asher yikshem mikem takrivun elai. The hardest cases, bring them to me. Bring them to me? What do you mean to me? You think the halacha is yours, Moshe Rabbeinu? You think you know the mishpat? The mishpat's not yours. The mishpat's HaKadosh Baruch Hu. When Moshe Rabbeinu is saying these words, there's a certain set level of like, you're trying to take the crown, you're now going to lose this halacha. The atara, the crown of the Torah that corresponds to this halacha, you're now losing this crown. Actually, if we open up the Midrash Otiot Rabbi Akiva, he says this even clearer, because after teaching this Rashi teaching, it adds, Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Elecha v'lo elai b'tmiya. Hashem's asking him, you said it's going to come to you and not to me? Chayecha ani malim mimcha davar shanashim yodot ken. I'm going to now, as a punishment, I'm going to take away from you a law that even the women know. Shneimar kem Benot Tzlophchad dovrot, as our case teaches us that the women knew this halacha. And Moshe Rabbeinu, the great Moshe Rabbeinu, did not know how to answer. Now that's approach number one in Rashi. Approach number two in Rashi focuses more on the zechut of these righteous daughters. Davar acher, now in a more positive light, different approach. Says Rashi, approach number two, that really Moshe Rabbeinu could have written down this halacha. This Torah could have been him. But rather, this was a special zechut for the daughters of Tzlophcad because they had a special merit to them, and therefore they had the zechut that the halacha will be taught through them. So it wasn't that Moshe Rabbeinu couldn't teach it. Moshe was on the level that he could teach it, but rather it was a special zechut because they deserved it. Okay. If we now fast forward to Rashi's explanation of Hashem's response to Moshe Rabbeinu, so now Rashi quotes a Tanchuma, he takes this even further. Says Rashi, so said God, Ken Benot Tzlophchad dovrot. They spoke well. What does this word Ken mean? So says Rashi, Ketargumo, like the Targum says, Ya'ut. Ya'ut means they spoke rightly. They spoke properly. Why? What does that mean they spoke properly? What is this Ken that they spoke? Kach ketuva parasha zo lifanai b'marom. This is exactly how the parasha is written, up above, up before me, in the heavens, in the yeshiva shel mala, in the marom. It's written the exact same way. Magid shirata enan mashelo ra'ata eno shel Moshe. This teaches us that what their eyes saw, the eyes of Moshe Rabbeinu didn't see. That's the Midrash Tanhuma. So we see that they were able to reach levels of understanding that were so high. They understood the halacha exactly the way it was in the Marom, up in the yeshiva and the Shamayim. Now says the Akut Reuveni on our parasha, quoting the plea. Dalecha, you should know. She'en yeshiva shlemata, she'en negdo lemala. There's no yeshiva down below, here on earth. In Olam Hazeh, there is no yeshiva down below that doesn't have corresponding a yeshiva in the Shamayim. V'kol echad mibnei yeshiva, yesh lo lemala, koach v'tzel kenegdo. And every one of the bnei yeshiva, anybody that's learning Torah down here below, he has up above in the Shamayim a koach and a tzel, some kind of a shadow, some kind of a power corresponding up above. Ve'im elef yeshivot lemata, kenegdan elef lemala. And if we have 1,000 yeshivas down below here in the world, so too in the world above, there's 1,000 yeshivot up there as well. Uma shilomdim lemata, hu shilomdim lemala. And what we're learning down here, they're learning up there as well. Ki Torah echad lahem, because the Torah is all one. If you open up the Gemarot, the Mishnayot, the Gemarot, all the rabbis there, the Tanas, the Amoras, their students, Kulam hayu b'Har Sinai b'Mamad Kol Yisrael. They were all there spiritually at the Ma'ad Har Sinai. Kodem Matan Torah, Kulam hayu lemala. But before Matan Torah, everybody was up above. V'abe pamim avra kol Torah kol al pihem, and they've gone through the Torah many times. And see, באמת, כשעלה משה למרום, מצאו לרבי עקיבא תלמידיו עמו. And when Moshe Rabbeinu goes up to the Shamayim, he sees Rabbi Akiva and all of his students learning Torah up in the Shamayim. וזה היה קודם מתן Torah. And that whole story he learns when Moshe Rabbeinu goes up to Marom is before Matan Torah. ואומר לך, דבר גדול, this is telling us a really big thing. כשעלה משה למרום, באו צילם וכוחם של בנות צלופחד וביקשו נחלת אביהן של בית ישראל בעד הבנות. And when Moshe Rabbeinu went up to the Marom, this shadow, this koach of the Torah of the Benot Tzlophchad was requesting a nachala, their father's nachala in Eretz Yisrael for all the women. V'nasu v'natnu sham, and there was a whole big, yeshiva debate up there. V'amar lehem HaKadosh Baruch Hu adin, and Hashem said halacha. V'kasher haya davar lemala, kach haya davar lemata. And just as it took place up above, so too it's taking place now down below. Lo sheMoshe haya shoel, el haya melamdam ma shaya lemala. Moshe Rabbeinu was telling them exactly what took place that he saw up above. Ki kula haya katuv, because everything was there. Dechen hamegadef v'koshesh utmeim ukeyatze bahem, and all those other cases where Moshe Rabbeinu doesn't know what to do, so too that Moshe Rabbeinu saw up in the Shamayim this whole debate happening. Veda, and you should know, when we're down below, we're learning this Torah, we're fighting out this Torah, we're debating the Torah down below. At the same moment, the koach, this koach in the shamayim is fighting it out up above as well. On the exact same topic. And sometimes it's spiritual up above, and sometimes the nefesh is down below, and in the guf, and the koach is up in the shamayim. So we have ourselves this parallel, this kenegdo happening. Now, Rav Moshe Wolfson in Apitecha, he writes based on this plea that Benot Tzlophchad were waiting until the right time to come to Moshe Rabbeinu. They were waiting and waiting. They actually waited 40 years to go by. We said they were very patient. They were very smart. So he says they were waiting until Moshe Rabbeinu was learning the laws of Yevamot down below. Because once he's learning those laws down below, so then the case is being learned up above in the Yeshiva Shalmala at the exact same time. And now they can make their case to the heavens as well. So that's why they were Chachamot, they were Darshaniot. They waited until right now to make the case. Because if he's learning the laws of Yevamot, the laws of remarriage, inheritance, all of these things, now is the time for us to make the debate because something's happening up above. Okay, that's how Moshe Wolfson learns from this plea, and it fits very well with what the plea says, that there's a corresponding thing taking place when we learn down below. But actually, if you look back at the language, it seems to be saying two things at the same time. When we learn the Torah down below, it's happening up above, but it also sounds like up above, it kind of already happened, meaning, time doesn't really take place in the exact same way as he said that Moshe Rabbeinu, before he got the Torah, as he was getting the first luchot, he's already seeing Rabbi Akiva and the students learning the Torah of the future. So the arguments of later generations are taking place even before Matan Torah, because they're also at Matan Torah. They're Neshamot, they're also at Matan Torah. So the timelines don't seem to always be exact. It seems to be that when we're learning down below, it's also learning up above. But it also seems to be that a lot of these debates already took place in some kind of spiritual sense earlier on. And the truth is, this actually helps me with an argument I tried to make a couple of years ago. We spoke about these Gemarot of Moshe Rabbeinu going up to the Marom to receive the Torah. And a lot of times it seems that the topic he's discussing relates a little bit more to what took place post-Egel. So I wanted to suggest that those Gemarot are not talking about the first time Moshe Rabbeinu went up to the Marom to get the first Luchot, but rather it's really referring to the second time he went up, because a lot of these Gemarot deal with Teshuvah and Rabbi Akiva and the oral Torah, which seems to be more of a second Luchot kind of Torah. So as I wanted to say, it was the second time that Moshe Rabbeinu went up. But based on this Yakut Reuveni, we can say, no, it's the first time he went up, but the first time he went up, he already saw the arguments that are going to take place based on the future events that are going to happen. Okay. Returning now to Rashi, so they understood the argument in the Marom. They understood the Torah. Their eyes saw what Moshe Rabbeinu's eyes didn't see. So this actually takes us back a little bit to what we said last week. Last week we spoke about the special section of the Torah known as Parashat Bilam in the Gemara Bava Batra Daf Yudal Amud Bet. It speaks about Parashat Bilam. And we said in one of our approaches, based on the simple read of the Gemara, that it seems to be that there's the Chumash, there's the whole Torah, and then there's Parashat Bilam, which itself is a bit of a different kind of Torah. And from the Pri Tzaddik used to speak about there's different parts of the Torah, some that connect directly back to the Torah that predated the world by 2,000 years, and other parts that Moshe Rabbeinu somehow synthesized into the Torah, and by taking like the real time events that took place and making that part of the Chumash much proper. So Baruch Shekivanti, I suggested last week that maybe this synthesis of the earthly events with the heavenly Torah, maybe we can look at it through the prism of the Ramban's ideas of the black fire and the white fire, the contiguous letters of the Torah, the earlier Torah in the Shemaim was just letters, letters, letters. So Baruch Shekivanti, I saw a similar idea this week in the Khatam Sofer on our parasha. So he explains that how could Moshe Rabbeinu not know the halacha for the Benot Tzlophchad if Hashem had taught him the whole Torah at Mount Sinai? So he says as follows: Omnam Yadua ki kol Torah hayta ktuva b'marom. He says it's known that the whole Torah was already written up in the Shemaim. Ach otan parashiot hamuchlatot nichtevu kavayatan. He says those sections of the parasha that seem to be like they're exact, I guess they're already ready made, they're not tied as we're saying to like events, they're written as it's supposed to be. Votan shetalui b'mikre, but those that need an event, kigon maaseh egel umeraglim ukadome haya rak haotiyot me'ubavim ketuvim v'achar maaseh nitztarfu v'na'asa mehem parasha ahi. And he says that it sounds like the letters up there were me'ubavim. They were all mixed up. I'm not sure if that means if they're not in the proper order. My understanding of the Ramban was that they're just all connected. We don't know where to put the commas. But after the event takes place, Nitztarfu, so I'm not sure that's what I'm saying. Mu'bavim and Nitztarfu kind of sounds like they might not be the exact order. We know that there are certain Kabbalistic ideas that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that we don't have Ein Mocha B'Gda B'Torah. We don't have an order in the Torah chronologically, because if we did, we could start doing crazy, magical creations of the world kind of things. So there is this concept that the Torah is not necessarily always following the exact order. So here maybe it sounds a little bit like the letters aren't as well. But once the event happens, then it all goes in the proper order, the proper way, the proper commas. V'nasamem parasha ahi, and we have the parasha the way it's supposed to be. So then the Khatam Sofer says that's what's taking place with the Benot Tzlophchad. He says, Im ken, lo hayta parasha zo ktuva lefanav, ela b'ta'orot otiyot. He says, if so, this whole section of the parasha of the Benot Tzlophchad, the laws of inheritance for girls, that was also in like this mixture of letters up top. She'ena metzurafot lazeh. Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu, kach parasha zo ktuva lefanai b'marom, metzurafot kavayatan. And after the Benot Tzlophchad made their case, he goes to Moshe Rabbeinu, Ken Dovrot, they're saying correctly, their eyes see the way it's supposed to, the order it's supposed to be up in the Shemaim, they get it, they see it clearly. And Moshe Rabbeinu, I want to give them the zechut, that they understood the halacha perfectly. I want you now to write the Torah, put the letters together properly, put those commas in the right place, because the way they said it over, their eyes saw the way the Torah was up in the Shemaim. Okay, that's the background to our psukim, to the story of the Benot Tzlophchad, their argument with Moshe Rabbeinu, and ultimately their winning argument to get inheritance. B'ezrat Hashem, in part 2, let's try to understand a little bit deeper Rashi's first approach, that Moshe Rabbeinu seemed to have lost the atara, he lost the crown to understand this bit of Torah, and maybe we can unify the two approaches and say there's something much deeper going on in this story of the Benot Tzlophchad, that in this story, Moshe Rabbeinu could not understand what's going on, and Dafka, the Benot Tzlophchad, could understand what's going on. Shabbat Shalom.